Good afternoon. So with this, we have almost come to our last session of this FDP. And when we envisaged this FDP, we thought that there should be some differentiator from the earlier FDP. So we thought, so there has to be some sessions on case study from industries. So some industry practitioner should come here and discuss about a real-time case study where some of the algorithmic techniques which you have learned all through this week has proved really useful and it has given an elegant solution. So along those lines, Dr. Muralidharan from Tata Consultancy Services. So he is here to share with you his vast experience. And he is a principal scientist from TCS. He heads the Decision Sciences and Algorithms group. Prior to that, he was Director, Quality and Technical Training, Computer Science Corporation, Senior Vice President in Coansys. He received his PhD in Mathematics from TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. His research interests are analytics, risk management, Bayesian models, and stochastic processes. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, sir. We welcome you for this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I think I am audible. Yeah. First, the good news and the bad news. The good news is that I won't be taking for 3 hours, just as your schedule says. We will complete by 3 o'clock, so you can go home at 3, meaning if there is no other session after that. The bad news is that I will try to keep you awake, even though you would want to sleep after a good lunch. Let me try and keep you awake. Okay. So when my daughter was in 12th standard and she was studying computer science, and I taught her this reverse Polish expression. You know that, right? How to evaluate an expression automatically, right? Using binary tree, you just convert a infix to a postfix and then evaluate that. The brackets are no longer needed. Priorities take care of themselves. And after that, she immediately asked, how does one discover these things? Generally, how does one discover an algorithm? Right? Be it a quick sort or even insertion sort and all those things. So if you look at, for instance, the card players, you know how they sort, right? So when the card is dealt, right? So they say if you are a very seasoned professional player, you take the first card. The first card is 9, so it's already in sorted place. Then you take the next card. This is 3. So compare this with 3, and then put that 3 has to come before. Okay. The next card, it's 4. You compare with 3, it is greater, meaning it's less, so it can't go before that. Then you 9, so 9 is larger, so I have to put it here, right? This is an insertion sort, isn't it? So typically this is king, so it has to go at the last and all those things. So they know this insertion sort as an algorithm, but if you ask them what kind of algorithm they use for sorting, they wouldn't know, right? How did all these card players discover that this is fastest way? See, if there are less number of cards as it is in the card play, there are only 13 cards maximum, and why not they use quick sort? Why not they use insertion, meaning bubble sort and all those things? They know intuitively that insertion sort is the smartest sort, and the number of things is very small, right? That we would have taught in the class as well. So today what we are going to do is that in the next an hour and a half, we are going to take a problem and we are going to discover an algorithm, okay? And how does we discover algorithm? We'll find out. I don't know how many of you have heard about the book How to Solve It by George Polya? Only one. That's a very how to solve it. The title is How to Solve It by George Polya. Oh, good. 3, 4. Okay. So that's a very charming book. It teaches you a 4-step method for solving math problems. Okay. Today we are going to look at some n-step method for solving problems using algorithms. So how do we do that? What are the steps involved and all those things, right? That's what we are going to do. And by the way, if you have any queries or if you find me boring or if you find me uninteresting and so on, you can raise your hand and ask a stupid question. I will give an equally stupid answer. Okay? Yeah. How do we design an algorithm? So initially, these I believe are the right steps, meaning at least the steps which normally we follow, even though we may not know them intuitively or formally. First, we take a problem statement. Then we find a naive approach, meaning we just find a very simple approach. How many of you would have to let us say to find an element, to find a let us say a number in a list? How many of you just search from end to end slowly? That's a naive approach. Even though we know that the thing is sorted, you would not have thought about binary search at all when we initially ask you to find something. You just say 1, 2, 3, etc., right? That's how we would have done. But after that, we will find out a naive approach. And then we found that naive approach is a bit complex, either in terms of number of steps or in terms of time and all those things. So it becomes a bit unwieldy for larger inputs. So you find out a naive approach is complex and has the disadvantages. Then search for better methods. Okay. So even this happens even in real life. For instance, you would have, I don't know how many of you would have tried taking the seeds out of a pomegranate. It's a very simple problem, right? I used to do it in a very hard way. You just cut it into 8 quadrants and then try to peel that and so on. And apparently one day I saw in a YouTube video, they did it very nicely. You just cut only once, half into that, and then with that small wooden hammer type thing, you just tap it. It comes out easily. A very smart algorithm, right? But I don't know how he thought about that. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. So we search for better algorithms. Of course, we do take wrong turns. Sometimes we make a mess and then we try to be smarter and then make a mess and then come back and suddenly we get better ideas. And finally, once we are convinced that this is the best idea we can do, then we have to establish 2 things. One is that a proof that it works in all cases and prove that it is optimal. Nobody can do better than this. So these are generally the steps in algorithms. So you would have, even if you see your textbook, that's how the whole thing would have processed. The first time is they would introduce a problem, then they would have given, of course, the book is good, they would have taken you through this kind of discovery process, okay, and they would have seen what is the right idea, and they would have shown the proof that it works, which can be omitted for most times, right? You don't do that, isn't it? And prove that it is optimal. And one more thing we have to do, which is what's the worst case that can happen. That also, because that teaches us in what cases it will not work, meaning it will not work in the time which is required. So this is how anyone designs an algorithm, but unfortunately we don't teach algorithms in this way to the students. So they just come out of this classes saying that algorithm is something which I have to mug up, right, and forget. Okay, so that's what. Let's see, at least from now onwards, we'll try to teach one algorithm in this fashion. Other thing is that we have a lot of paradigms like the incremental design or the decremental design or recursive or divide and conquer. All of them, of course, you would have covered. And you also would have covered which problems are amenable for, let us say, divide and conquer, which problems are recursive design. So the mazes or all those things are canonically recursive design, meaning the problem is recursive, the solution is also recursive. Or similarly, divide and conquer also certain things like sorting can be arrived at as a divide and conquer method if the problem is large enough and all those. So of course, we have to teach the design paradigms as well. Of course, this incremental design I already showed you this. If you really want to put this technically, an incremental design is something like I have an input of size n. I have to find a solution which will be one number or one entity and so on. I first solve the problem for one input. Then I can build on that input, adding one more input, and so on. So S1 is the solution for the one, if I have only one input. For instance, if I have only one card, this is the solution. This is the one input S1 solution. I have 2 cards. I already have this solution which is sorted. Second card is less than the first card. But note that I am using the first solution. I am not starting from scratch. So this has to come before that. So I just put it here like this. The third input, I have this one. So I already have sorted order. So I have to use this solution to derive the solution for the third part. So I put this in this kind of thing. So as soon as I exhaust all the cards, then we are done. Correct? So that's what the intuitive solution is. There is one more concept which goes this way. Can you remember what is that? You solve one problem, second problem, third problem, fourth problem. Have you heard about? Huh? There's one more thing which is very similar to this. Okay, huh? Pardon? No, actually this is basically an inductive approach. Meaning if it's induction also, it's the same thing. You prove the first statement, assume that Pk is true, then prove that Pk plus 1 is true, then everything else is, isn't it? That's what that induction is. Okay, it is similar to this. Again, induction you have to be very careful. Let me tell you a story. A professor told the class, next week there will be a test and it will be a surprise for you. Okay? The students thought that suppose if it's a surprise test, can it be on the Friday? Definitely not, because up to Thursday, if we didn't give the test, they would know that Friday there will be a test, right? So it's no longer a surprise. The professor will not give a test on Friday. So we know that Friday is out. Friday you can't give a test. That's Thursday. You know that Friday cannot be the test. Up to Wednesday, if we didn't give the test, correct? Thursday cannot be definitely, because it will be, you would have known that Thursday would be a test. So it can't be Thursday as well. So Thursday and Friday are out. Can it be Wednesday? Definitely you know that by Tuesday evening, if you don't have the test, Wednesday can't be the test, because Thursday definitely is out, but Friday is also out. Wednesday also can be a test. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is out. So Tuesday is also out, and Monday is also out. The students decided there won't be a test. Let us not study at all. Okay, very good induction, nicely applied, and the teacher gave the test on Tuesday. What's wrong with this? So think about it, and it's food for thought for you. Okay. So incremental design in induction, you have to be extremely careful, and this is one thing which you would have taught to your class, like finding the maximum. So we have an input of n size. I can find maximum. The first one is definitely itself. Maximum of M1 and A2. I have to make one comparison to arrive at this. S3 I will have to have M2 and A3, one more comparison. And similarly, if I have n items, how many comparisons I will be making? First one, there is no comparison at all. Second one, 1. Third one, 1. Fourth one, 1. Fifth one, 1. So nth one, 1. So there are n minus 1 comparisons. So to sort an input of array of A1, A2, An, to find the maximum of A1, A2, An, I need to make n minus 1 comparison. You remember this, you will use it later. Okay. So this guy will come again after some time. So this is actually an incremental design. So I use the first solution to arrive at the second solution, then use the second solution to arrive at the third solution, and so on. So this is the normal step of any incremental design is. Okay. So at least in this case it works. So now for the fun part. A blind person is standing at the origin. Okay, there's an infinite line. Okay. And somewhere along the line, either on the right side or on the left side, there is a treasure of $1 billion. These days, because of the rupee value, I think nobody is willing to have a treasure in rupees. Let's have it in dollars. At least that is stable. So it's lying somewhere on the x-axis. The point is, you don't have a sensor to locate what that is and all those things. And you will know that treasure is at that point only when you go that point. Even if the treasure is the next step, you won't be able to know unless you go to that step, right? That's why it is blind person. She wouldn't know where the thing is unless she knows there, and then she is standing on the treasure. That's the only point. So design a strategy for the blind person to help her discover the booty with minimal walking. The poor lady, right? She's also blind, so you can't ask her to walk too many steps, isn't it? So what's the minimal number of steps that will be required to find a treasure? It can be anywhere on that line. So if the line is bounded, you can say that walk all the way to the right. If you don't find it, walk all the way to the left. You are done. Correct? That's a very nice solution, but it's not bounded. If you start walking in one direction, you will walk in that direction forever. Right? You will never come back. On the other hand, treasure will be just next to the origin on the minus side. So you will miss that treasure, isn't it? So to make to ensure that you don't give that naive solution, we have made it as infinite line. Okay. Now, any bright ideas? Have you seen this problem before? Good. It shows my skin. Yeah. Okay. We can alternate. Now we find this. Oh, you will know that. Very good. So this is what our first naive solution is. We are going to do that anyway, right? So this is the pressure. We have anywhere it will be there. It can be at the origin, means it's no problem at all. Okay. Now, what he is saying is, what's the good name? Uttu Annamalai. So what his Annamalai is saying is, walk in this first direction and then come back to the origin, because you don't go away, because this pressure may be the other side also, and check the next one and come back to the origin, and check the next one this side, second, come back to the origin, check the next one, the other side, come back to the origin, next one, and you can go on like this. So go one step like this, come back, next step like this, come back, two steps, come back, like that, right? Let's see how, let's assume that the pressure is at the 100th place. I don't know the distance, I don't know the distance, but suppose she finds the pressure at the 100th place, either on this side or that side. Let's assume this strategy. How many steps she would have taken to find that pressure at the 100th place? Let us calculate that. So this is the, so for 1 and minus 1, to cover the points 1 and minus 1, how many steps I would have made? I would have made 1 here, 1 back, 2 steps, 1 here, 1 back, 2 steps. So 4 steps I would have made. Okay. Plus 2 and minus 2, how many would have made? Plus 2, and another 2 and another 2, so 4 times 2. And again, plus 3 and minus 3, 4 times, pattern is very clear. 4 minus 4, 4 times 4. So n and minus n, 4 times n. So if the pressure is found at the place n, for any n, how many steps would have taken? The total distance will be 4 into 1 plus 2 plus etc. up to n. This is a very simple arithmetic progress. You know the sum of these things. So it's 2n and n plus 1. So when she finds the pressure at 100, so up to 99, she will not find a treasure. So she has to go all the way up to 99, correct? And come back to this one, come back to this 99 and come back to the origin. So she has to cover 2 times 99 into 99 plus 1. Then she goes to 100th place that side, but she may find a treasure, but she may not also. Correct? It may be on the other 100. I said it will be 100. So 100 here. So that's what she walks here. Then she has to go to the other 100 on the other side. So how much distance is there? 200 plus another 200. So totally, how much is that? This is 2 into 99 plus this is 100, 198. 198 is 19,800 plus 300, so 20,100 steps. So she makes 20,100 steps to find a treasure at the 100th place. Is it good enough? Right? Of course, it is 1 billion, so still it is fine. So if it is 100 rupees, not worth it, but 1 billion is definitely fine. Okay? So this is what happens in a very typical naive solution. We feel that probably we may prove at the end of the class that this is the best. At least we will search for some more time. Correct? So once we search for some more time, then we will find out this. Okay, by the way, my PhD is in mathematics. I make a lot of mistakes in maths. Okay? There may be some arithmetic errors in all these slides. Okay? It's for you to find them out. Okay? So keep looking for some errors. Definitely, I am very poor in meaning multiplication and addition. So please keep a watch on that. Pardon? It is 1 plus n. It is n into n plus 1 by 2. 1 plus n into n plus 1 by 2. So, okay. So that you don't get this doubt next time, let me tell you another story. Okay. There is this child prodigy Gauss. You would have heard about him? No. Most of you are very unfamiliar with math, I believe. Right? So you would have heard about a mathematician called Gauss. He is one of the stalwarts in math. He found a lot of things. He is German man. Okay. In fact, if you have euro, okay, if you have euro note, you will find the Gauss photograph, and the one key thing which he found, which he discovered in life, meaning which he discovered about mathematics, you would find Gauss photograph will be there in the euro note. There is a Gauss photograph here, and at the end, at here, there is something like this. There is a symbol like that. That's actually a normal distribution, the Gaussian distribution. So, to honor his discovery about Gaussian distribution, which is used almost everywhere in statistics, okay. So, the euro note has this one. Okay, if I had known that I will tell you the story, I would have brought that note anyway. So, but the story goes like this. Normally in this first standard, second standard kids and so on, right? They are very noisy. You have to keep them occupied. Otherwise, they start fighting and then making a lot of noise and so on. The teacher wants to take rest. What she used to do? She used to, when the Gauss was a student, okay? She used to say, add from 1,000, and everybody will 1, 2, 3. So they will add thousands and so on. And then the procedure is that after you finish count, meaning adding, you have to write the answer on the slate and then put it on the teacher's desk. Okay, this it will take about an hour for them. 1,000 is quite a lot of addition and so on. So they have to do that. But Gauss, when he was a student, he as soon as she stated the problem, he wrote the answer and then put the slate. Okay, and she was surprised. How can he add so quickly? I mean, normally, of course, he is very good as a mathematics student, but this is too quick for her. So she asked him, how do you know the answer? He said it's very simple. So it is 1 plus 2 plus 3 and so on up to 1,000. To write the whole thing in the reverse order, 1,000 plus 999 plus 998 and so on up to 1. Now we add them vertically. I get 1,001 plus 1,001 plus 1,001 and 1,001. How many 1,001s are there? 1,000 are there. How many times I have added? Twice, because I added this once, this twice. So 1,000 into 1,001 is my twice the sum required. So the number which the addition you want is 1,000 into 1,001 by 2. Done. Right? You don't need any of those additions. So next time you will never get a doubt about 110, 1 plus 2 up to n. Right? There are stories for other things also, but anyway, not this time. Okay. So now we have, coming back to this, we have 20,100 steps. Is it a good step? Is it a reasonably economical way of doing this? Probably not. Let's try for a better solution. Can there be a better solution? Yeah, we will come to that. We will come to that in a minute. But is there another simpler way? Spiral? Very good. We can do it in a spiral version also, which is what we did now. No, is it not spiral? We went here, we went here, we went here, we went here, and so on. This is more or less a spiral only, right? That's what we did. So if you do spiral thing, you come to this solution. This anomaly solution is slightly different, but we'll come to that solution in a short, meaning after some time. Now here, let me see one more. Let me have an idea like this. When you go shopping, no, then you go to, let us say, T Nagar, and then you go there and then what's the short? I don't go with my wife, meaning it takes a long time, so normally I stay at home. So I don't know the real topography of T Nagar. Let's take a simple example. So let's say it's Pothys. So having come to Pothys, why not check Kumarans also? It is nearby. Why should you come for Kumarans again? So it may not be in the agenda at all. So she wanted to buy only a cotton saree. She went to Pothys. Suddenly, why not next month there is a wedding coming in? Why not I pick up a printed silk? So Kumarans is famous for printed silk. So let's go there. It's already there. Otherwise, she has to come another trip, right? Good enough. So that way, having come to 1 and minus 1, why not go back to 0 and all those things? Why not visit minus 2? Okay. Of course, I have to visit 2 now. I will visit 2. Having come to 2, let me visit 3. Let me visit 3 and then come to minus 3 and visit minus 4 because that is closer to that, and 4, and having come to 4, let us visit Kumarans and then go back and all those, right? So this is one more way of doing things. Of course, there is no guarantee that this will reduce the number of steps, but let's count again, okay? So that's the thing. Let's see what happens. So I have 1 and minus 1. How many steps I have made? I made 1 step to go from 0 to 1 and then 2 steps to go to minus 2, sorry, minus 1. So 1 step to go to 1 and 2 steps to go to minus 1. Then 1 step to go to 2 and 2 into 2 steps to go to plus 2. Because here I have at minus 2, I have to visit 2. So there are 4 in between. So if I have to cover plus 2 and minus 2, I have to have 1 plus 4. And having come to 2, I have to cover 3 and minus 3. I have 1 step here to 3 and 6 steps to minus 3. So here what is that? 1 plus 6. Once you write down these 3 things, then the rest is simple. So 4 to minus 4, 1 plus 5. 5 to minus 5, 1 plus 10. N to minus n, 1 plus 2n. Isn't it? So now what's the number of distance covered? There will be n ones. So there will be n ones like this. And 2 into 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 extra up to 2n, which is 2 times 1 plus 2 extra up to n. That we already know what that is. So this is, so I am sorry. This is n into n plus 1 by 2. Okay? And this 2 will go away. So this is n into n plus 1 plus n. So which is n square plus n, which is n square plus 2n. Or it is n into n plus 2. Okay? Let's see what happens now. When n is at 100, I have to visit 99 and minus 99. So that will be taken care of in 99 into 99 plus 2, which is this step. Then I go to 100, one more step, and then I won't find it there, so I have to find it the other 100, which is 200. So totally what? It is, this is 101 into 99 plus 201. So you can check whether that answer is correct. So 10,200 steps. What was the previous one? 20,100 steps. So a small change, both is to Kumbarans, it reduces by half, correct? So half it is from 20,100, what I have is 10,200 steps, that's all, right? Half of it. Is it good enough? Let's say whether this is good enough also, okay? Now, Annamalai suggested that why not go 2 steps and then next day 2 steps and so on. Sometimes that doesn't work. Okay, let's see why it doesn't work. Suppose I want to find out the maximum, for instance, any problem, what you are suggesting is this. Take the first two things and then find a solution, then add the next 2, add the next 2 and so on, right? Let's see whether this works in the case of finding maximum. The step is good. It may work in our case, but it doesn't work all the cases. Let me check whether we'll find out whether it works in our case. Before that, let us see whether this works in this case. Okay. So for maximum of A1 and A2, how many comparisons I have to make? 1 comparison I have to make. Then add 2 more. How many comparisons I have to make? I have to compare A3 with M2 and A4 with M2. So I have to make 2 more comparisons. Next thing, again I have to make 2 more comparisons. And so on, up to, assume that it is 2n, meaning there is no difference between odd and even. Suppose if the number of inputs is 2n, and I have 1 comparison here, 2 comparisons here, 2 comparisons here, and up to 2 comparisons here. So how many comparisons I would have made? 1 plus 2 times n. Previously when there is n, we saw that there are only n minus n comparisons to find the maximum. Now I am making 2 more comparisons. So here it is 2n are there. The previous method I would have found it in 2n minus 1 steps. But here I am finding in 2n plus 1 steps. So it's not good, right? So do you still want to do that? The other one? 2 steps at a time? Here also the same thing, right? If I take 100 of that thing like this, still it will be the same thing, isn't it? You still want to do, or we can drop and do something else? You have to do. Oh. brave enough. Okay. So let's see whether anomalous thing works. Of course, without loss of generality, we assume that the whole n is 2k, meaning assume that it is 2k, we will find out how many steps are required if the rush is found at n, plus n or minus n. So our idea is to make 1 and 2, visit 1 and 2 first, then visit minus 1 and minus 2. Okay. Still, of course, we have learnt a lot by visiting Pothis and Kumarans. So I will do that also. Visit the 2 next places and then visit the other 2 next places on this side. So visit these 2 places and visit those 2 places. So we keep on doing that. So first 2, the next 2, nearby 2. Of course, your method may be that come back here and then these 2 and those 2. That is similar to this. Okay. So you can make the calculation how much and so on. We will make for this one. So if this is the case, let's count how many of these steps, how many steps are required. Carefully, okay? Meaning, be careful, there are lots of, before I prepared this slides, I made a mistake in several of the slides. Even as of, I started at my office around 11:30. At 11:15 I found a bug and then corrected the computation, okay? Hope there is none now, but if you find something, let me know. So for 2 and minus 2, how many distance covered? I have 1, 2, and then I have up to minus 2, I have to go from 2. So 2 plus 4 I have to do. So this is 2 plus 4. And from there, I have to cover 4 and minus 4. 4 because I come to 3, 4, and then I come to what I am saying. See, this is 1, I am sorry, 1 and minus 1. So I have 0, 1 and 2, and 2 and minus, and then I have like this, minus 3 and minus 4, and then 3 and 4. So between minus 4 and plus 4, I have 2 plus, see carefully, see this is 2 plus 2, 4, then I have this 2 and plus another 6, 8, that means 2 plus 8, 2k and minus 2k and 2 plus 4k. So let us count now, how many 2's are there? There will be k 2's, so 2k, plus 4 into 1 plus 2 extra up to k. So 2k is our n, that's our assumption, okay, that's our assumption. So in this case I have n plus, this is k into k plus 1 by 2, I will cancel out 1, 2, I have 2k into k plus 1, which is n into n by 2 plus 1, isn't it? So I have n square by 2 plus 2n. So when it is 100, I need to visit both 100 and minus 100. So I need to have, you can just check this out, it is 100 square by 2 plus 2n, which is 5,200 steps. 20,100, next was what, 10,200, now it is 5,200. Can we do much better? Can we do more? 5.2, 503, 504, 505, let's see. Let's assume n is equal to 3k and do this 1, 2, 3, this one, and again visit this and so on. You can always do that one. It is a simple computation here, and we can just check this out, and then when n square, that's what you will get, n square by 3 plus 2n, and when it's 100, you have to visit plus 9 and minus 9 minus 99. That will happen in these many steps, plus I have to visit plus 100 and minus 100. See, I have 99. After that, I am not going to visit 100 alone. I have to visit 3 steps there, 100, 101, 102. So that's why this 3. Okay. Then I have to visit up to the next 200 there. So I have 102 on this side, 100 on the other side. So 202 steps I have to visit. Total of 3,770 steps I have to visit. So from 20,000, we have reduced it to 1/6 of that. If I do it at 1/4, all those things, we can keep on doing that, isn't it? So these are all, meaning, what should I say, naive idea, a slightly smarter idea, and all those. There is a smartest idea here. Okay. Why we need to look for smartest idea is, you are all computer science teachers, you know this for sure. The main culprit is this guy. Whatever you do, this fraction, this divider can be 10 power million. But still, if the number of steps is large enough, that is useless, because whenever I have an n square algorithm, that is practically non-scaling for very large values of n. Because if your bubble sort is an n square algorithm, you can't try sorting a 1 million record using bubble sort. It will take all day or even all week. But an n log n or even a linear algorithm will take much faster. So we always have to be away from this n square algorithm. Of course, there are some problems where n square is the natural order. There we can't do anything. But here I have to reduce. So what do you think the natural complexity of this problem? N log n square, or you can say n square is the best. You can't do anything at all, because there are both sides I have to go for n. What more you can do? What's your guess? 2n? 2n? How 2n? 2n? You said 2n or 2n square? 2n. How 2n? We don't know n. We don't know. That's the point. If you know n, there's no issue at all. I don't know n. Correct? I don't know n. It's like, for instance, if I know the position of the card in the list, that's one look. That's what I want to search, right? That doesn't make that's not what we are looking for. I know that the card is there in that sorted list. List. I have to find where it is. It's there, right? Where it is. If I know the position, there's only one look. I have to go there and look, isn't it? It's like searching for the key. It's there somewhere in the house, right? At the end of it, you find it in the drawer. And then that's the only look you do. No, you have looked at about 15 drawers, and then after that you found out it is in your pocket. Correct? So it's there in the list. But how many wasteful searches or how many searches you make so before you locate that is the problem. So that is the size of the solution. Depending on the size of the problem, the size of solution is what we are looking at. So if this n is the size of the problem, the size of this solution is n square by 3. Previous solution was n square by 2. Previous one was n square. We keep on reducing. So if you decide to go for 4 at a time, then definitely it will be n square by 4, but that doesn't meaning. So this will get reduced to say 2000 steps and so on, right? So we are going to really make. Yeah, we are close. We will do that, but we won't do just that quite. We will do one more meaning. That's why this algorithm is very famous. Meaning, you may think that this is a wasteful algorithm. Why nobody is looking for treasure anywhere and all those things, right? But this is a very key algorithm for one reason. Many of you would not have seen a tape drive. Have you? A tape drive on the computer. Some of the older folks would have seen. So younger folks would not have seen. Previously, there is no hard disk and all those. There is all the data was stored in tapes. And then if you see the movies, they show a computer room or something. They show only the tape drive. 2 tapes will be there. They will never show the console and so on. For those naive directors, the tape drive, because that's the one which is moving. In the computer, nothing is moving. So that's what usually called the computer. In tape, I know that the information is there somewhere in the tape. The head, I can find information only the head comes to that particular location of the tape. So how do you search? I don't know. The location may be, the tape may be in somewhere in, but there's a pool here and there's a pool here. There's a head here. So I have to rotate the tape this side or that side. So one thing is that I can always look at in one direction, meaning rotate the tape fast and then look for everything in the one side, look for other thing and so on. So if you do that, every time you search for a name in a directory stored on the tape, for instance, credit card number or something, you have to rotate the tape full times once at least. Number one, it's a mechanical device. That's a wear and tear. And if you do it for 10 days, the tape will wear out. That's not a good solution. Okay? So the algorithms are found for locating information on the tape in the smartest thing is written as a system program, because that is a very complicated algorithm, meaning that's the activity which is done almost 10,000 times a day. So I have to be very fast, and I should not wear out the tape quickly also. So this was a very famous solution, and the solution is extremely smart. Okay, and the smart solution is one thing. The other one is that somebody answered whether can there be a smarter solution, and that is much more interesting. Somebody showed that there cannot be a smart solution. So here I can say that I am the smartest guy, so I found this, and you can't find anything better than that. The life doesn't end there. Somebody showed mathematically, which is a very complex proof, so that whatever that guy found, the other person found, he is the smartest. There can be no more smarter algorithms for this. Right? That's what we are going to show. So I am going to do one thing which is slightly different from what you suggested. I am going to look at, first of all, let me look at n is 2 power k. Why should I go 1, 2, 3 and so on? Why not go 2 here, 4 there, 8 there, 16 there, 32 there and all those things? Let me work, okay, and get rid of this n square. Let's see. So what I will do, I will just go to 2 here and minus 2, and again, see this is plus 1 and minus 1, which is 2 power 0 and minus 2 power 0, minus 2 power 0. Then I will go to minus 2 power 1 and plus 2 power 1. Then I will go to 2 square and I will go to minus 2 square. Then I will go to minus 2 cube. Still the other one works. If I come closer to minus 2 square, minus 2 cubed is closer. So I will go there and then go to this one. I will come back here and plus 2 cube. Next step will be go to plus 2 power 4 here and then go up to minus 2 power 4 and then minus 2 power 5 and all those things. So this is what we are going to do. So this way, what will happen now? So this will be one side. This is covering, meaning as you proceed further and further, you will be covering more and more and more parts. Let's see whether this works. Okay, how much work I need. Let's do it carefully. So I am covering plus 2 power 0 and minus 2 power 0, which is plus and minus 1. So I have to do 1 plus 2. Correct? Then I have to cover minus 2 and plus 2. So I have 2 power 1 minus 2 power 0. That's what the distance between minus 2, meaning minus 2 and plus 2, minus 2 and minus 1. And I have to go, see, to cover this from minus 1 to minus 2, I have to cover one step. And then I have to go back all the way to this step, plus 2. So that is, this is 1 plus 2 times 1. And this is much more clearer in this case. So 4 and minus 4, I have to cover 2 steps here, that is 2 square minus 2 power 1. Because this, I am going to 2 square, from where I am going, 2 power 1 I am going. So how many steps I have to walk? 2 square minus 2 power 1. And I have to go back to, up to which one? I have to go back to plus 2 square. Okay, so I have to go back to another 2 to 2 square. So cover to origin and then again. Again from here, from minus 2 square, I have to go to minus 2 cube, which is 2 cubed minus 2 square. And I have to come back to 2 cubed, which is again minus 2 cubed is this 2 cubed is the origin, another 2 cubed to the plus 2 cubed. So I keep on doing that. So that's a nice pattern here. So 2 power 1 minus 2 power 0. So 2 power k minus 2 power k minus 1 is what? From 2 power k minus 1, I have to go to 2 power k. The distance is 2 power k minus 2 power k minus 1. So if I have to go from n to m, the distance is what? M minus n. So similarly, this is. Then I have to go back to all the way to the plus 2 power k from minus 2 power k, which is 2 times 2 power k. So I have to add all these things up, right? So let me add. Note that it's a very simple addition now. So I have all these things. So this 1 will cancel out with this 2 will cancel out with this, 2 square will cancel out with this, and all those things. So I left with a 2 power k, and this is 2 into 2 power 0, 2 power 1, etc. up to this. And this is a famous geometric progression. So that sum, if you don't know, what is that sum? Huh? So this is, I need, what I need is 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to 2 power k. Yeah. What is that sum? Huh? What's that sum? I have written it down, but anyway, so it's okay. So what's that sum? No, your computer science. Okay, let me. 2 power n minus 2 power 2 power k minus 1, 2 minus 1. So there is a 2 power k here. There are so many terms here. You are saying the sum is just 2 power k minus 1. This already is larger than 2 power k. You are saying this, these things don't, meaning these things sum up to minus 1 or what? 2 power k plus 1 minus 1. Now, what's the smartest way to see this? I don't need any calculation at all. I don't need to remember. That's the problem. See, you always try to recall a formula. Correct? Whenever you see something, you try to recall a formula. If you try to recall, don't recall. If you try to reason out what could happen this way, then you will definitely remember. Okay, you are, what is this in binary? How do you know? Huh? 4 to 1. 2 power 0 plus 2 power 1 plus 2 square. This is 7, you already know. What I am asking, 1, 1, 1, 1, etc. up to 1, k digit binary. Is this not, this 7 is it not equal to 1, 0, 0, 0, minus 1 in binary? That's how we do, right? And what is this guy? 1, 0, 0, 0. I already have k here. So what is this? At the k plus 1th place, I have 1. That means this must be 2 power k plus 1. So I need a minus 1, finish. No geometric progression, just binary arithmetic. Correct? So this one, that is 1 plus, 2 square. So 1, 1, 1, 1, etc. is just k digit binary. If you use that, then it is obvious, isn't it? Doesn't matter. Okay, so I already have done that. So 2 power k plus 1 minus 1, I will get 2 power k plus 2 minus 2. And what was my k? K was 2 power k. So 2 power k was n. So I have to substitute this back. This is n. This is 4n minus 2, so 5n minus 2. So from n square, we come back to 5n minus 2. And let's see what this will give when I have what? When I have n is equal to 100. So when n is 100, which will be the closest place to 100 I will go? Closest place? I will go in the first iteration, I will go 1 and minus 1. Second iteration, 2 and minus 2. Third, 4 and minus 4. Next one, 8 and minus 8. Then 16 and minus 16. 32 minus 62. 32 minus 32. 64 minus 64. I have gone up to that. So 64 minus 64 I would have gone. How much steps I would have done that way? 5 times 64 minus 2. Correct? In covering up to 64, I would have covered 5 times 64 minus 2. Then what I have to do? I can't, even that if it is 100, then I would have found out, but that's not what we really want. So I have to go up to 128 in that direction. So I would have walked another 64. Then I have to come back to, where should I come back to? I would have got up to 128 on the other side. I have to come back to the origin by spending 128, isn't it? Then I have to go to 100 on the other direction. So how many steps I need? 5 into 64 minus 2 plus 64 to go to the next step, 128. Then 128 to come to the origin, and then 100 to go to the next step. That means what? I have 610 steps total. Now we have started with 20,200 steps. We have come up to 610 steps for finding $1 billion. So see the range of reduction. Okay. Now you may ask, what will happen if it is 3 power k, 4 power k? This is one smart. Can there be some other? Suppose what I use Fibonacci numbers. Let's I go to, you know Fibonacci, right? Okay, I go to 1, here 1, then I will go to 2, that side 5, then 7, and all those. Will it reduce? Can it be much faster than, instead of 5n, will it be say 4n? Or will it be n power 3 by 8, meaning n power 0.99? even then it will be a much bigger difference, right? Between n and n power 0.99, there's a huge difference when n is large. So can it be that done that way? Okay, so people have been asking about whether there can be much more smarter algorithm, even if reducing the power from 1 to that one, right? You will find a lot of algorithms in which somebody will prove that it is 8, meaning k times, sorry, order of n. Somebody will put order of n per 0.99. Even that will be a huge difference because that n may be usually of the order 10 billion, correct? If you want, for instance, if you are looking for a graph search algorithm, and then the face, meaning the graph of network of graphs of people connections in the network in the internet is of the order of 10 to the power of 20 billion or something like that, isn't it? So those connections, if you want to search in even n power 0.99 times, it will be a great, meaning great advancement in computer science. So that also meant. So people are wondering whether this can be made any further. In fact, there cannot be a better strategy. That was the proof given by these two people in 1993, who showed that whatever you do, you can never make anything better than 9n. That's what they said. Whatever you do, it can never be more than, meaning it will be always less than or equal to 9 times 9. Correct? You may wonder, we proved 5n. Why they said it is 9n? Huh? Yeah, we just only that n, right? But there is a worst case in this case, which will definitely take up to this. Okay, so it can never be, meaning it can't be better than this. That's what they proved, and this is a nice theorem, extremely complex math analysis. So if you are interested, you can search the net and then find a proof. Okay, right. So far so good. Any doubts? Be clear. So this is basically a very theoretical solution, meaning it's a theoretical problem. Do we use this in real life? I mean, do we use not exactly this problem, but do we use a similar incremental algorithm in TCS? Okay. Let me describe this problem. We have a practical application. So we have a large number of weights. Okay, like W up to Wn, and we need to select k weights such that the average weight of the selected weights is as close as possible to a given mu. Okay, that's what we have to find. We have very large, meaning about the order of, let us say, 1 million weights I have. They may not be all equal, meaning they may not be distinct. They are all, some of them may be equal and all those things. So we need to select k. The k is fixed. For instance, in our case, it was 30 weights I have to fix. I have to select such that the average here. Actually, our thing is not the average. I will come to that later. Suppose I have to select k weights. So the average weight of all the selected weights as close as possible to a given mu. How will you go about that? So, do you have a similar problem you would have heard? Defective pieces? Okay. You haven't heard of bin packing? No? Bin packing problem you haven't heard? Not done this. Knapsack. Yeah, sorry, knapsack. My wrong terminology. So, knapsack problem, right? Is it like knapsack? Knapsack, it is, you have to find a total. Total is something less than or equal to something. Here it is the average. Okay? So, since given that it is similar to knapsack, definitely it is NP complete and all those things. You may wonder whether TCS has entered the business of groceries. Why are we interested in average and all those things, right? Average of weights and all those things, right? It's actually not this problem. We are interested in a different problem. See, every year we select up to about 30,000 students from the campuses. Okay, and of course we have an entrance test, aptitude test, which we have to. This campus season varies between September onwards to the next year March time frame. We visit about close to about 500 campuses all over India. So we can't visit all of them in the same day, and we conduct the test, and we have to conduct, suppose in some of the colleges, there are about 2,000 students who take our test. So we can't have 2,000 students take the test the same day because they don't have 2,000 systems in the first place. We have to do it in batches. So I have to have question papers for them. Correct? So one is that I can have the same question paper in all the batches. That will be suicidal because once the first batch is out, the whole question paper is in the Facebook along with the answers. Right? And so there is practically no use. Everybody else from that batch onwards, they'll score 100. So the whole discriminatory power of the test goes away. So I have to have different tests. And I have to be fair to students. That is, I can't have a very tough question paper for the first batch and a different toughness question paper for the second batch. So I have to sort of more or less match the difficulty level. Not only from September onwards to March, we conduct close about 1,200 sessions. I need 1,200 question papers, each having 30 questions, all of same difficulty level. Correct? That's what these weights are. Weights will come to. So first of all, I need to pick 30 weights 1,200 times. Such that all those 1,200 times, the weights are different from one another as a set, but all of them have the same type of, same characteristic as average. So this is the practical difficult problem. Okay. And what are these weights now? These weights are basically the probability a student, an average student, will answer the question correctly. So over the period of time, we have collected data on all these things. For instance, if a student's grade in the BE exam is about, let us say, 8.5 or whatever that is, his probability of answering this question, this one particular question, is 0.8. That is, he will answer it right. So we have Q and R. R is that what's the probability a student will leave the question, meaning he will not attempt it at all. What's the probability that he will get it correctly? So we have collected for this. And I have a question bank which contains about 200,000 questions, categorized into small batches, meaning small categories. Each category will be similar, and they are all generated from a single concept. So we have all those batches, and each of them will be the same difficulty level and all those things. And every time we set a question paper, we generate a question paper using these weights, using these probabilities, so that the average student will be able to pass with a probability of 0.5. So that's what. So here this average, which I said, is a more difficult problem. What I have to do is that I have 30 questions, and those 30 questions are, so I have 30 probabilities, P1, P2 up to P30. So the probability that this person will get, let us say, greater than or equal to a given cutoff mark K is what I have to evaluate. It's a very complex probability problem. So I can't do it that easily. So we use a simulation. We simulate and show that and choose the things carefully that this set of question paper, this set will have this kind of probability. So that question paper is set for one session. And we weed out this, whatever I have set in the first session, and then retire them and do the same thing for the second session and so on. So we keep on doing that, and every year we churn it out like this. So how do we, so this is what that problem is. This actually is incremental design. What we normally do is that initially this is my mu. So randomly you choose one thing which is less than this. Okay, and then that average will be much lesser than mu. Okay, then choose something which is on the other side, because this probability is 0.2 of answering. There is one more question which is 0.8 of answering. The average of these two will get at least 1 mark instead of, meaning both 0 and all those things. Similarly, you keep on zigzagging from. So you remember the algorithm which we did? Do something this side, do something the other side, do something this side, do something the other side, and so on. So this same thing which we use, we also use the 2 power, meaning multiply, what's the doubling algorithm. We choose 2 questions, then 4 questions, 8 questions, 16 questions, and all those things. And finally, we do a simulation and see whether the average is correct. Okay. So we do this, and once we do this, then probably we had to discard almost all the questions in 1 year. That's meaning about 200,000 questions we had to discard, because almost many of them would have exposed, meaning I won't use all of them. At least about half of them we had to discard. The remaining half we keep intact and then keep on reinventing, meaning more problems and more things and all those things. That's how the whole thing runs, right? So this is, we have a patent for this algorithm, meaning it's a heuristic, meaning all these things I have not described here. There are certain nitty-gritty details which we own, meaning what we do is only we know in some of these cases. Okay, so those things I have not revealed, but the other things more or less at a very high level, this is what it is. Okay, so a very complex practical problem has been solved using an algorithmic approach and of course statistical approach using an incremental design. Okay, it took close to about a year to develop the algorithm, test it out, and then of course we had a lot of other issues like 1 year almost the entire question paper was on the Facebook, meaning from one particular place, and in another year there was some campuses where they had remote access to the students' test center, then somebody was answering remotely. Those things also happening, but anyway, the robbery is always one step ahead of the police. The students are not robbers, but still they do anything to pass. So those kind of issues are there, but anyway, we will solve one way or the other. So that's where the whole thing is. But the solution development was a very big challenge, because previously we have been getting hit hard by the campuses. Like for instance, everybody will score 95% and above. What's the point? Meaning we can't pick all of them, isn't it? That way, at least this really saved the day. Okay. Okay. Any questions? No questions? Apart from? Yeah, nowadays not possible. Previously, there is some case of Alice. You heard about that? No. That's a patent case in the US. Previously, US Patent Office was allowing algorithms and methodologies to be patented. And suddenly, there was a big case with respect to one particular patent, and they said that you cannot patent an algorithm because it is known, and algorithm can be implemented in different ways. The implementation is really the key. That is, the working model is really the patent, not the theoretical knowledge of that this will work. Okay, so nobody can patent a quicksort, but a quicksort implementation can be patented. Yeah, because the implementation is your own, because you would have implemented in a very smart way. Even though the algorithm is the same, implementation can be different. You may have a hardware implementation, not necessarily software implementation. For instance, certain things are hardware implemented, right? For instance, most of the graphic algorithms are hardware implemented. The graphic processors, some of them can move. See, for instance, I don't know whether that is when you in your smartphone, when you just do this swipe, the whole thing has to move. It's a very big linear algebra calculation. That's what it does, and that is done in firmware. Most of the cases, right? So similarly, if you just do this, that again is a dilation. That's also a mathematical computation. Just to dilate each and every pixel, but it does a smart thing, meaning it doesn't do all the pixels at one go. For instance, if you look at WhatsApp, when an image comes, usually the rough image comes, then it just this one. That's a very good algorithm, because it just chooses which image, which thing to show initially quickly, so that it will give you an indication of what that boundary of the image is. Then it fills in the rest of the details. So you get the impression of speed, right? That's again a very smart algorithm, right? So those are all implemented, not just described. That is patentable. Okay. So a method like this, as such, an algorithm is not patentable. Okay. But the implementation content, as I said, I have much more details in this than which I revealed. Okay. So that tool which chooses the algorithm and does the simulation and all those things, does some smart things inside. No, it's not a hardware, it's only a software, but it runs in a slightly different way. That implementation of this thing itself is totally different. That is patented. Okay. Any other question?
Earlier question which you did in this last how you actually prepared the question papers for this.
Yeah.
Again, reiterate.
No, that treasure hunt is basically I took that as the thing only to illustrate the incremental nature of the solution. So this also is incremental nature of, because I can't select all the 30 randomly and then keep trying. It will be sort of a very brute force and then bad search. It may not even end, right? So I have to really keep going this side, that side, and it's like a weighing the balance. So just put big weight, see whether it is more or less, and then look at smaller weight and things like that. That's what we use. So the analogy is complete, meaning there also we go this side, that side. Here also we do the thing. But beyond that, those two are two different problems. Only thing is they are similar in the nature of approach to a solution and not the solution per se. So I thought that the restaurant problem will give you set you the context to see how a problem like this can be approached as a solution. So in fact, at least in my opinion, rather than the algorithm, the approach taken to arrive at the algorithm is much more important. It's like the journey, right? It's the destination is meaningless, like life. The destination is death, meaning nobody is interested in that. But the journey is more important. So this is the journey which I wanted to describe, and that's why I took the problem, right? Otherwise, see, quicksort. In fact, if you know how many, you can read about the history of quicksort on the net. You will see how people are wandered around before they hit upon the quicksort, right? So that's the kind of thing which is more interesting to know than the algorithm. The algorithm is like a finished product, but that's not interesting. The making of that is much more important. That will give you more insight into how people really discover, and then you can also discover, right? So, any other questions? So as I promised, I finished, meaning not in an hour and a half, but an hour. But anyway.
So on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank Dr. Muralidharan for spending his time to be with us and giving a practical application. That is of one of the algorithmic technique. We, in fact, originally intended to have another such case study from MSR, Microsoft Research Labs, but due to clash in schedules, we could not get them. So, but hoping to have some repository of such practical case studies in future, so that as faculty members, you will be in a better position to go back and tell the students, remember that first lecture which Professor Ramanujam gave, why you should study algorithms, and if people are coming and asking that question, so you will be in a better position to answer that question. Of course, all the students are interested in DREAM and Super DREAM placement, so that will be a real reason to lure them into the algorithm area. And of course, you can also shape them into some, if they have inclination, they can go into that research area also, like several people from IMSC and CMI told you. Okay, with this we are coming to the end of this faculty development program. Now I would like to hear from you participants regarding whatever positives or negatives or suggestions for improvements. We would be grateful if you can share that personally here. Anyway, we are giving you some feedback form to fill out, but it will be nice if you can share that personally by coming forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Gautam, research scholar from Amarda School of Engineering. The first thing I want to appreciate is whenever I go on for a session presenting something, the first and foremost question that they ask is, explain the algorithmic complexity of your product, the time and space complexity. And doing my UGs, I used to stare like anything. But now I can unravel many things here regarding complexity. And then I was greatly amazed by the hospitality of the institution. Great work, ma'am. And thanks a lot for giving such a great opportunity to speak in front of you all. Thanks a lot.
Good afternoon, everyone. As I told in the first session, I'm new to algorithms. I have not even learned it in my UG or PG. I'm not at all an algorithm. I was not a person who deal with programming. I learned a lot. That's why this 1 week I feel like a whole semester got over or something. So when I go back to college, I think this would definitely help my students, and as it has helped me to learn a lot. Because I had, before taking the subject, I had a lot of assumptions about the subject, what I'm going to teach, how it is going to be. Now it has changed a little. Now I know what should I make them learn, or where I should make them look into. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. And we are looking forward for more such sessions.
Actually, when Sir told us about this FDP happening, we just thought, okay, we'll be having this subject in this semester, so we'll just go and have a look at how it will be. But before coming here, like I just went through a few things, at least to grasp what they are saying, at least I wanted to know some basics. And then after coming here, after what they all taught, there is a lot more to algorithms than just the complexity or something. It is like it teaches you to approach any problem. That is the thing I learned. Not just for like all these hard different types of problems, but any type of problem you can develop and like approached on how to solve the problem. So I learned quite a lot in this week. Yeah, it was a nice experience. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank our HOD and the organizers for admitting students into this faculty development program. It actually, the whole process was more enjoyable. It wasn't the usual classroom learning with the exam pressures or the marks, where we could discover ourselves by making mistakes. And finally, what it all came down to where we started from. The first lecture where Professor Ramanujam said the real question of why we need to study algorithms, that I feel I'm a little bit closer to finding that answer. And yes, indeed, it was a bag of tricks, as ma'am said, because as the days progressed, the magnitude of tricks we learned was enormous. So it was really nice to see such an artistic sense in computer science field. So thank you for everything.
Else wants to speak up. So I would like to say a few things and then also thank few people who are instrumental in this. So before thanking, there are some things here. That is, this program was conducted in association with ACM India Education Committee. So ACM is the premier society for computing. So some of you, so all the people who have come here, so in your own institutes, if you do not have a ACM student chapter, please go back and consider starting a ACM student chapter. And you can arrange a lot of productive activities there. That is, once you get it started, the students will naturally take it over. That is, they will be enthusiastic in conducting such events. And you have avenues for bringing in international people by distinguished speaker program, or several eminent people are in India itself. Like you noticed, all the people who talked here, they are right here in Chennai. So you cannot find a better set of people than this. So such people also can come to your institutes and they can talk to your students through the ACM India Eminent Speaker Program. So go back and check it all out. If you go to www.acm.org, then a lot of information is available. And ACM also has annual event every year where they bring in Turing Award winners, such as this year Edward Feigenbaum, one of the pioneers in artificial intelligence. So he had come to deliver the address. So like that, each year different people come. So it's an excellent opportunity for at least some of your students to get exposed to listening to those very inspiring talks. So please do consider starting a ACM student chapter. And as part of this FDP is concerned, that is what we are envisioning is, this is a very small drop, that is some tip in the iceberg which we have tried to attack. But our vision is to make it scale, like throughout India. So there are so many institutes, so many these things, and in several places you do not have the well-qualified teachers to teach the students. So it is the intention, first of all, the faculty somehow get exposed to such good quality material so that they can disseminate this to the students in a more interesting and inspiring manner. So like you say, so it should not be like when you are sitting in the regular class also, that same enthusiasm and same this thing should somehow be class after class if we are able to sustain that, which is a really tall order, I agree. But then that is what we are striving for. Somehow if we can, by seeing these sort of stalwarts, so how can we sustain the interest? How do we give different sort of examples or interesting practical things? So we are going to somehow find a way of making these kind of videographed lectures through ACM site in a proper licensed way, and we will let you know. In the meanwhile, what I would suggest is you please use this forum. You now, by now you should be knowing all the participants of this FDP. You should have gotten some contact details and everything. So make sure that you interact with each other, and also you, when you are actually teaching this course while you go back to your own institute, while teaching, if you are coming across practical doubts and anything, maybe those doubts would not have come while listening here, because it's very intense. Like 5 days continuously you have been listening, at some points you definitely tend to drift. So when you go back and try to teach to your students, you are most welcome to send some emails, or maybe we will try to set up a formal discussion forums through which you can clarify your doubts, and also you can contribute to the clarifying other people's doubts. So such a thing should evolve as an outcome of this faculty development program. And maybe in your own area, that is in your region, you can be a key person and try to see that these material, can you reuse this or adapt it to conduct another FDP, something like that. So because everybody has not been able to attend this FDP, but there are so many people who would like to make use of this material. So is it possible to use this and then augment this with your own resource persons in your area and conduct another FDP? These are the thoughts. So please reflect on them, and hopefully we should be able to, with all your help and everybody's help, we should be able to increase the quality of CS education in India. And now coming to thank the key people here. First of all, I would like to thank all the resource persons who have, really, I had the great pleasure of, if I send a mail to anyone, so everybody was so willing to help. Sir immediately accepted, and similarly everyone from IMSC or CMI or IIT Madras, all the people had the great willingness and readiness to help for this FDP amidst of all their work pressure. So I would like to thank every one of them, and particularly Professor Madhavan Mukund, because he is also part of ACM, he is ACM India's Vice President, and he was the key person to make this make this both in terms of financially and as well as identifying crucial resource persons. And of course, I would like to thank all the participants. That without you, there is no FDP, because I know how much I was agonizing each day, like, oh, is it like with all these kind of resource persons, I'm not getting the participants. So I really appreciate all the people who had the willingness to come here and listen to this and enhance your knowledge. And I would like to thank ACM India for sponsoring this program partially. And of course, I would like to thank our college management for making every facility available, starting from UPS and several manpower and so many things. That is, I would like to thank our principal management, and of course, my co-organizers, Professor Milton and Balasubramanian. So everybody made it happen in this flawless way. So if at all you had any difficulties, you can let us know so that we will improve that in future. Thank you very much.
Kamleshwari, Miss Usha Sukanya, Mr. V.S. Ashok Kumar, Miss J. Bala, Mr. Miss K. Ramalakshmi, Miss M. Hema, Miss K. Kalibodi, Miss S. T. Shanmugamu, Miss P. Hemalata, Miss P. Miss A. Asmat Patan, Miss R. Harini Priyadarshini, Miss J. U. Uzaya, Miss R. Sundari, Miss S. Saumya, C. P. Jetli, Miss P.